Welcome to Off Leash and Unfiltered. Trigger warning, I'm Katie Pepe, delivering the truth in dog training. Hey, this is your host, Katie Pepe, owner of Diamond Canine Dog Training in Biddeford, Maine. For those of you that are new here, we specialize in e-collar training, so we help dogs listen, off-leash, and around distractions, or if your dog's being an absolute total jerk, well, we can help with that too. We do it all, and we do puppy training too. This podcast is just my way of sharing, well, everything with you guys, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I will always be honest about how to fix the problems you might be dealing with your dog. So we're not your average super floofy dog training podcast. We are real and honest around here. What you can do is hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode and so that you can help support the podcast. Every subscribe or follow helps us so much so I can keep putting out this content. We appreciate you. And without further ado, let's jump in. Hey everybody, we're talking about myths today. Man, there are so many myths out there. So many, we can't possibly cover them all, but I want to talk about the 5 top ones that I hear because I feel like people are probably going, I know they are, not everybody, but we meet a lot of people who say these things to us. So we know that people are going way out of their way to do these things or avoid doing these things. And it's not doing them any good. So, maybe, this is kind of the opposite of what we're always telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? Maybe you're doing things you just don't need to pull your hair out about anymore. Like maybe you can actually let your hair down. Maybe you can relax a little bit. Maybe some of the stuff you're doing that you're working so hard to be quote unquote consistent with, maybe it really doesn't matter. Wouldn't you kind of like to know that? So, and some of it's a little more nuanced. So, we'll talk about that too. But here's one of the things that we hear a lot. Actually, let me take a look. Let me take a quick peek at my list because we want to go in some kind of order here. So, let's talk about number 5. Number 5, I have heard people say, that they've read or they've heard that they should always eat before they feed their dog. That they shouldn't feed the dog first, that the dog shouldn't eat while they're eating. They should always eat first. We hear this a lot about the door too, right? That people should go through the door before their dogs. Like they should never let the dog go through the door first. And it's all baloney. So, I don't think any of that matters. If you're familiar with me and you're familiar with what we do, you probably already know that our philosophy really is just one of having a permission-based relationship with your dog. So it's not about who goes through the door first as much as it is about your dog just not going through the door without your permission. So I send my dogs outside without me all the time. I'm not even going through the door at all. But they don't choose on their own to just fly through. So that's a difference. But, every time you're going through that door trying to make sure that you get that first step, like that's just silly. And first of all, most people wouldn't really know how to get that behavior from their dogs. So what ends up happening is you have to have the dog on a leash and you have to really physically manage them and like hold them back or, it's just silly. It doesn't matter. But, you should have control of when your dog goes through the door. And so it's important to know how to correct your dog for going through doors that they weren't supposed to go through. But stop worrying about who goes first. It really doesn't matter. Eating first, same business. It's like, do what's convenient for you, right? So it's less about you should always do things this way in this order, and it's more about you should do what works for you and your dog should be okay with that. All right. You shouldn't be, I would say, if you're giving up your food to the dog when you're eating, that's probably not great. Like if you have a dog that begs and like you're throwing them stuff from your plate. I mean, most people don't like that anyway, so they're not going to do that. But, and for a lot of dogs, if they're not rude, pushy, snotty, or aggressive or anything like that, maybe it's not a big deal if you don't mind doing that with your dog. But you could see how dog becomes the pushy one that trains the human. I get your food. It's like, that's not great. But who eats first? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Do what works for you in your household. Just have standards for your dog. Require them to be calm. Require them to be patient. Don't allow them to encroach on your space when you're eating, things of that nature. But who eats first? Who cares? Like, it's very arbitrary. Like, it's just not important specifically. Okay. Number 2. I should say number 4, right? Because we're going backwards. So we started with number 5, eating before your dog, your dog going through the door before you, like that stuff, not super important. It's more about just, being calm, being respectful, and respecting your rules and waiting for your permission and things of that nature. That's much, much more important than who actually goes first. Number 4, your dog shouldn't be in bed with you. That's a really common one, right? And everybody expects me to think that and to say that. And sometimes I do. But it's very much based in what is your dog like? What is your relationship like? What are your issues that you're experiencing? As a general rule, saying your dog shouldn't be in bed with you or your dog shouldn't be on the furniture, again, arbitrary. Why? Right? Some dogs can sleep in the bed with you and they can get on the couch with you and they can never have any behavioral problems at all. Other dogs, not so much, right? So it just depends. And it probably depends too, like, not just on what your dog is like, but what does the rest of your day look like? So if you're a real softie and you never enforce any rules, you don't have any expectations, it's like, you better have a real soft, easy dog if they're going to be on your couch and in your bed. But some people do have that. And so maybe it's fine. So I don't care. Like, I think having your dog in bed with you is fine. Having your dog on the couch is fine if that's what you want, right? So you'll see that common theme in all of these things. It's like, what do you want, right? And then we just have to make sure that everything across the board looks pretty much the way we want it to, right? Because we might be experiencing a problem in another area that's tied to this area. And so in those cases, maybe you can't have your dog on the furniture with you if those things are kind of related or tied together. But most of the time, if things are working for you and you want your dog on the furniture in the bed with you, have at it, man, right? As long as you're getting good stuff from your dog. It's when you're not getting good stuff from your dog that we want to take a look at maybe removing those privileges temporarily, or for some dogs forever, but I think that's pretty rare. Just depends. It depends on the dog, depends on the humans and what kind of humans they are and how strong their personalities are and what their lifestyle is like and what kind of a relationship have they built with their dog. But I think having your dogs in bed with you is fine. My pug sometimes will be in bed with us, but not our grown dog, mostly just because he's too big and he's on knees and elbows, and that would be no fun. That would be no fun. But I did have a dog. And yes, this is the nutty dog that kicked off my dog training career, who absolutely could not handle any furniture privileges at all. She would turn into the devil. The second you let her up on the couch, she would decide whole place was hers. And it was dangerous, to be honest. Like, some dogs it will absolutely elevate their status in their minds. They just become a little too big for their britches. And that's why it's such a unique case-by-case thing, but generally speaking, as a rule, your dog shouldn't be in the bed or on the couch. Arbitrary. What do you want? And are you genuinely getting good stuff from your dog the rest of the day? So that's what we look at. That's what we think about. Number 3, there is a myth out there that says if you spay and neuter your dog, you can avoid behavioral issues or fix behavioral issues. False. So I'm not going to say it never makes a difference, right? There's no way to really say that with any real certainty. But what I can say with certainty is that there's no guarantee it's going to help you with behavioral issues in any aspect. It might not. Here's what else they don't tell you. It might make them worse. So we have absolutely seen, especially dogs that tend to be on the anxious side, on the reactive side, we have absolutely seen that get worse sometimes after spay and neuter procedures. Does it always? No. Does it improve? Sometimes, although that's pretty uncommon. I think once a dog has begun practicing unwanted behaviors, spay and neuter rarely does anything to help it. Rarely. Now, I do think there's the possibility of avoiding some sexual related behaviors like marking, potentially fighting, especially if you have multiple dogs in your house of different genders, like that's a possibility. Maybe some of that stuff can be avoided through spay or neuter. But my point really is just that it's a lot messier than just spay and neuter is always the right thing to do, and it will always make things better, and it's always your best chance at having a well-adjusted dog. False, false, false. So, I could go on all day about this topic, but the fact is spay and neuter is obviously a veterinary thing. It's a physiological thing that we're doing to the dog. It's not my field, but we do see hundreds and hundreds of dogs. Obviously, we see them spayed and neutered. We see them not spayed and neutered. We see them before and after frequently, right? Because we'll meet them as puppies and even as adult dogs, and then we'll see them again afterwards. So we definitely have gotten the opportunity to evaluate many, many different types of dogs, different personalities, and kind of see the changes that occur. And our experience has just been that you can absolutely have a very well-adjusted dog who's not spayed or neutered. And you can very, very well have a very poorly adjusted dog who is spayed or neutered. And so I think it's just important to clarify that I'm not saying it never makes a difference. I'm just saying it doesn't always. And when it does, it's not always positive. So it's not this clean cut black and white everyone wants to make it out to be. Most vets want to make it out to be that way. Like it's always the right thing to do and it's always beneficial. Or if you have any hope at anything being better, this is how you do it. It's just simply not true. It's actually a lot messier than that. And I think it deserves your attention. I think it deserves for you to think about it, to research it, to talk to people, and to try to find out. Because the fact is, maybe the most important thing is having a vet that you really trust, that you think is experienced, that you think uses their brain and will be honest with you. And not just sign you up for a procedure because that's the status quo. But the fact is, I think the vast majority, and I'm not picking on veterinarians here. It's not just veterinarians. This goes for everybody in every field, guys. Everybody. The vast majority of quote unquote professionals in any field, they're just stating status quo. This is what I was fed. This is what I was told. This is what I read. This is what my professor said. This is what the book said. This is what this study from 1972 with no details disclosed. This is what it said. And the truth is, they don't know. They don't know that they don't know, but they don't know. So you can't just take someone's word for it, right? If you're going to do that, choose somebody wisely that you have reason to believe knows what they're talking about. Because it's just too easy for different entities with different agendas and different motivations to just create this myth and make something normal. And, anytime that there's any kind of like moral obligation, like there's pressure on you from a societal perspective for you to do a certain thing, that should raise a red flag. It's like, why? Why is it so important to you that I cut my dog's balls off? People go on and on about overpopulation and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, my dog's not impregnating any other dogs. So again, I'm not trying to make the case that you shouldn't fix your dog. I think probably a lot of folks should. I think especially if you have multiple dogs in your household and you're not adept at like running a tight ship and the leadership and building the right relationships and having order in your household, you probably are better off without all those sex hormones flying around, right? I mean, also with female dogs, there's a lot of other problems that get dragged into it, right? Because now you've got a dog that bleeds a couple times a year. And so you have to deal with that. And everywhere you bring them, they're getting all the dogs' attention and, they're moody and like all this stuff. There's lots of things to think about. And then there's the risk of cancer, which is, debatable, and you'll find different information saying different things. I have my opinions on it. I think I've talked about it before, but the fact is we're still kind of waiting to see, I think, because it is hard to find unbiased information out there. For my male dogs, I've chosen not to neuter them. That's been working out fine for us. But it's a personal choice, and the idea that you have to do it and that it's going to fix all your problems is a myth. All right, we're moving on. Number 2. It's a good one. A lot of people seem to think that there's a couple of different things here kind of wrapped into one. If you play tug of war with your dog, you're encouraging aggression. That's ridiculous. So, okay, I'll give you this. Like, you are, even if it is play, you are engaging in an activity with your dog where one of you will win and one of you will lose. And I'm sure there are absolutely dogs out there where if you play tug of war, they may sort of enjoy that feeling of being engaged in sort of a low conflict, right? Even though it's play, it could morph into more than that, especially over time. You're sort of prodding and nourishing, if they have it, that aspect of engaging in conflict and then being victorious over you, right? If they win the game of tug of war. Yeah, I could see how that could sort of nurture stuff we don't want in a dog that already has that proclivity, though. Like, you're not going to generate that by playing tug of war with your dog, okay? I play tug of war with my pug. He'll hang on like a pit bull. I can pick up that rope and he'll just hang from it.
It's hilarious. And there's not a blood cell in him that thinks he's going to get away with anything in my house. So, play is play is play, right? So playing tug of war with your dog is fine. I will set some conditions though. If you have a dog that clearly enjoys conflict, in other words, they like getting a rise out of you, they talk back to you when you try to draw boundaries with them, that's probably a dog you shouldn't have that physical play with. And I say physical play, I mean engaging in that back of and forth tug of war where there's like an imbalance, right? But if you do, and I would say this is true for all dogs, I would like for you to have this, but especially if you have a dog like that, right? If you have a dog like that, you probably shouldn't do it unless you're going to have a lot of rules around it, right? And then it could actually be a beneficial thing if you have rules around it, which is why I like to do that with all dogs. It's like, think about it. I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. When you play a game with somebody, if you sit down and you play a game of chess, you play a game of volleyball, I don't care what the game is, there's rules. You're not just allowed to go out there and pummel the ball or move the chips wherever you want. Like, there are rules that you have to abide by. And unfortunately, when most of us play with our dogs, we don't have any rules.
Love the podcast? Well, I have great news. We are now offering an inexpensive subscription where you can get access to our new premium content. This content isn't available to our general listeners. It's made just for you. It includes all kinds of behind the scenes stuff, all the obstacles and how we're overcoming them with our board and trained dogs, and the most difficult part of our job, how we deal with overcoming obstacles with our clients. So all kinds of new, cool, interesting stuff for you to get out of those episodes. You can jump down into the show notes and there will be a link to our support page where you can sign up and start listening right away. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the rest of the show.
It's just pure play, which translates to the dog just doing anything they want and following every impulse they have with no rules. So I think it's a lot more beneficial for the dog and for your relationship if there's still rules. I'm not saying you have to take play and turn it into work. But for instance, if I go out and I play fetch, I throw the ball around for my dog, there are expectations, such as if I call you back, you have to come. If I ask you to drop the ball, you have to drop it. And you're not allowed to go back to it until I say so. If I ask you to randomly lay down for some reason, you have to do it. And if I throw the ball, you still have to do it. You have to lay there until I tell you you can get up. So, and I don't always do that, but I'll throw those in here and there. Right? But there's some kind of rules, there's some kind of boundaries and expectations, and that can make play still tons of fun, but also very valuable. Because I think play might be one of the areas where people really damage their relationship with their dog. Right? Because we want people to play with their dog. Of course we do, especially puppies. But if you're putting in all this effort in all of these other areas to have a relationship of respect and to create order in your house, and then you're spending 2 hours a day, quote unquote, playing with your dog where all the rules go out the window, you're hurting yourself. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Right? And so I'm going to get a little off topic here. I'm going to start rambling about structured play. But I think when it comes to this myth about tug of war, that fixes it. You just have to have rules and expectations, and as long as you have those, you can play tug of war. So my bigger dog, Boo, who's half pity, he loves a good game of tug, but he's extremely respectful. And he pulls hard, man. He's strong, and he'll play growl, and he'll give it a good shake. And he genuinely tries to get it away from me, and he's a big guy, he's strong. But if I tell him to out, he drops it instantaneously. Right? And I don't do that all the time because I do want him to have fun. I do want us to have the game of tug. I want to put up a fight. But if I ask him to drop it, damn it, he's going to. Right? So he has that respect for me and he doesn't lose that respect for me when we're engaged in a game. I think that fixes that problem. But you know, a lot of dogs, they just don't do that. They don't push those boundaries. They don't use their teeth on people. They don't talk back. They're not pushy. They're not aggressive. They're not any of those things. And the thought or the idea that you're going to play tug of war and somehow turn them into an aggressive dog is silly. It's just play. I've heard similar things about feeding your dog raw meat. Everybody can relax. Tug of war does not make your dog aggressive. Feeding your dog raw meat does not make your dog aggressive. But, you know, if you really want to sit down and think about where these myths came from, probably, I mean, let's face it, raw meat for most dogs is going to be a very, very high value item, right? And so when are you most likely to see resource guarding? Probably when there's raw meat around, right? So it's plausible to think that a lot of folks just never see that side of their dog. And then when they bring out the raw meat, they see it. And so now the thinking is raw meat made my dog aggressive. But in all actuality, the dog's always been that way. They just never saw it. Right? It's always been there and it could always come out. And it could come out for anything at any time. Right? But it just hasn't. But then that elicited that response. And so now we pin it on the raw meat. So I would say, no, raw meat does not make your dog aggressive. If you happen to find out that your dog is aggressive when you start feeding them raw meat, then, you know, that's an opportunity for you to start building a different relationship with them. Right? So hopefully you heard the last episode about in the prevention series and resource guarding. But the act of playing tug of war or feeding your dog raw meat, those things are not going to make your dog an aggressive dog. They may unveil traits, personality traits that are already there. You just didn't know about it, right? But it didn't generate them. It didn't cause them. That is not the case. All right, who can guess the number one myth when it comes to dogs? Drum roll, please. Number one on our list of the top 5 myths is you should always use positive-only methods to train your dog. Who didn't see that coming? If you didn't see that coming, shame on you. It means you're not listening to enough of my stuff. Okay. So I don't know how much we really need to go into detail about this one. But I'm going to try to keep myself on track here and just very briefly outline why this is a myth. All right. First of all, we've been talking a lot about aggression lately and resource guarding. And a lot of the things we covered in this episode were things that people believe cause aggression, right? If you don't spay your dog, or if you play tug of war, you feed them raw meat, if you let them in your bed, like these things are going to make your dog aggressive. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. You know what is likely to nurture aggression in your dog? Now, I'm not going to say create or generate, but to nurture. You know what will teach your dog to be more aggressive? Only using positive reinforcement. 110%. This can only increase aggression. I mean that literally. I'm not saying that feeding your dog treats makes them aggressive. That's not what I'm saying. So I try to be very precise in my speech, people, so listen closely. What I'm saying is, if your dog has any behaviors that are not stellar, and especially if they have any behaviors that are aggressive, are a little pushy, are a little snotty, if your dog's a little mouthy, any of these things, and you're using rewards to try to fix it, you're in big trouble, because you can really only increase behaviors with rewards. You're not going to decrease things, generally speaking. Not in the long term. Even if you think you're getting what you want in the moment, it's not in the long term. So you may be trying to increase other behaviors to decrease the bad behavior. And I can see where you're coming from. That sounds good in theory. But the fact is, increasing another behavior will not eliminate any other behavior. And unless you're really confident in what you're doing, which you're obviously not if this is your your method, you risk accidentally increasing the wrong behaviors. Do you see where I'm coming from? So in other words, you might be using, let's just use jumping as a simple example. A lot of times when dogs jump up on people, people think, oh, I'll teach my dog to sit, that way they can't jump, right? Yeah, brilliant. Tell me more. So, okay, they teach their dog to sit, they give him a treat. They teach the dog to sit, they give him a treat. Someone comes in, dog sits, they give him a treat, right? So they think they're just increasing the sit. But the fact is, they might actually increase the jumping depending on what they're doing, and also just depending on their dog's wiring. You may very well create a cycle. If your dog jumps and then you say sit and feed him a treat, what cycle are we creating? Jump, sit, treat, jump, sit, treat, jump, sit, treat. So the only thing increasing is not just sit. We're also increasing jump. Right? So now take that and translate it to aggression. It's not great. Someone has a dog that growls or bites over a resource, and they're playing the trade game, getting the dog to drop things and feeding them treats. It's like, okay, but we're not having the conversation with our dog that tells them not to do that. And we are increasing arousal and building a relationship where we're a Pez dispenser and potentially feeding behavior that's indicative of guarding, because maybe we don't see it. Right? If we have a dog that starts to put their head down, starts to get stiff because they're uncomfortable that we're moving toward a resource, and then we're like, hey, drop it, here's a bone. Hey, drop it, like, here's a cookie. We're risking increasing those bad behaviors. So the thought process is, oh, but they dropped the resource for me and I gave them a treat. It's like, I know, but it started with them guarding. So really the sequence start to finish is I guard and I end up with a cookie. Right? And it's a little messier than this. I'm kind of oversimplifying things a little bit. And as always, it depends on the individual dog and the relationship with the people and all these things. But it's really, really common for folks that are only using positive reinforcement to absolutely increase the frequency and intensity of the behaviors that they are trying to eliminate. I see it all the time. Dogs get more aroused, more reactive, more protective, possessive, more aggressive, more anxious. Like, all the things we're trying to fix get worse. Because you're trying to create a false reality. There has to be negative consequences for things. There have to be things we're motivated for, things we're motivated to avoid, things we want to increase, things we want to decrease. You need the broad spectrum, right? It's because that's called reality. Like, that's the actual world we live in. Trying to change behavior, especially to eliminate behaviors, by cutting out half of reality is nuts, and it doesn't work. So the myth is that you should only use positive reinforcement and that if you use anything else, you're going to damage your dog and damage your relationship, when actually, and this is why it's number one, it is absolutely the polar opposite of the truth. Well, I like to be precise in my speech. Maybe it's not the polar opposite, right? Because that would be that you should only use negative consequences. But saying that using negative consequences can be damaging, like, that is so far from the truth, you guys, because without those things, you can't eliminate behaviors. You can't build a balanced relationship with your dog. You can't garner respect from your dog. You can't even teach your dog how to not be fearful without negative consequences. It's going to be extremely difficult and probably impossible. You can't tie your hands. You can't cut out half of reality and actually succeed in eliminating behaviors and creating a confident, balanced dog and a healthy relationship. You can't do it. And most of the time that we see dogs that are really reactive and really aggressive, they have had nothing but positive reinforcement training up until they come here. And then we balance things out, of course. But so explain that. Most of them are spayed and neutered, and they've had nothing but positive reinforcement, and they're a mess. So the myths, there they are. Don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into the myths. Hey, don't take my word for it either. Find out for yourself. Absolutely. That's really what we want to encourage people to do, is use their brains, use their critical thinking, do their research. And research can't just be a cursory Google glance, guys, because the internet's full of garbage, especially when it comes to dog training. It is full of garbage. You need real world feedback. You need to see it with your own eyes. And if you can do that, you're going to be all right. But if you're spending all of your time saying, I got to go through the door first, I got to eat first, I can't have my dog in my bed, we can't play tug of war, you know what? I'm happy to tell you, you can relax.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If there's a topic you'd like to hear discussed, you can send that to me directly at katie@diamondk9.com via email. So I will link to that email address in the show notes. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Thanks for supporting the podcast, and I look forward to the next one.